Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast. The Magical Learning Podcast is a podcast that takes hard topics in everyday life and business and looks at them in a fun and lighthearted way. Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by returning guest Rita Cincotta, a bit of a favourite here on the Magical Learning Podcast, to talk about her new book, You Are How You Lead. Now, one of the key things that we wanted to talk about with that book was deliberate leadership and the concept of deliberate leadership. For people that don't know, Rita is an amazing coach, author, and speaker who works on human-centered solutions that help people and businesses to thrive. She's amazing, and she does a lot of work on deliberate leadership, which we break down. So enjoy this one. I hope you get as much out of it as we did. And as always, everybody, have a magical week. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. As you can tell by the title, we have a guest, and we'll get to them very shortly. But first, let's check in with the regular team, see what's going on. So I might start with Al. Al, you were first on today from our regular crew. So how are you feeling this week? What's going on?
I'm feeling relieved. I've been doing a lot of study over the last couple of months doing my Cert 4 in training and assessing, and last night I submitted all my papers and it is done.
Yay! Congratulations, Al. That's amazing.
Oh, thanks, Jez. And just in time for our big holiday coming up as well, which I don't think I've told you guys about. When you were speaking, I think you said Italian, Jez. I was wondering if that was French because we're off to Europe for 3 weeks with the girls, which we're very excited about.
That's amazing, Al. Where are you heading to?
We're going to Paris, London and Nice.
Well, that sounds like it's going to be a Nice time. Fantastic, Al. I think there's no better way to celebrate finishing a Cert 4 than heading over to Europe for a couple of weeks. So good call.
I agree. Thanks, Jez.
No problem. Thanks, Al. Jeanette, I'll throw to you now. How's your week been?
My week's been really lovely, Jez. Been at the farm, had Reese and Emma, who some listeners would have remembered. Emma's been a guest, so Emma Gibbons, on the podcast previously, and we had a lovely time hanging out at the farm. And now I'm in Canberra, so I've got some meetings here today and had some yesterday as well. So, and then we'll head home this afternoon to hopefully rain.
Yes. I know in Melbourne it's meant to be a lot of rain, so hopefully up in Gundagai there'll be some. And very exciting that Reese and Emma came down. If people want to check out Emma's episode, I'll link that one as well, so you can go have a listen and get the full experience of Mum's story there. So thanks for that, Danette. Let's go to Graham. Graham, how's your week going?
Morning, Jess. Morning, everyone. Look, so far so good. Yeah, hump day. Kind of excited about that. I'm impressed that despite asking for my advice about the Cert 4 in training and assessment, and that advice was don't bother. Al just went ahead and did it anyway. Good on you. I'm really excited to hear how you actually apply that Cert 4 in training and assessment during your holiday to Europe. So I don't know how we do this, like video or something, but yeah, be interested to hear that. And it was great to have Reese and Emma at the farm over the weekend. They very politely complimented me on dinner that I cooked on Saturday night. They should be over the Burra Creek belly by now, I'm hoping. I haven't heard from them, but I'm hoping that everything's okay.
Yes, and we should highlight for people that don't know, Burra Creek is the very close creek to the farm.
Correct.
Absolutely. Well, good job on the cooking there, Graham. Amazing to hear. And Rita, returning guest. How's your week been?
Thank you for having me back. I'm so pleased to be back with you lovely people having a chat today. My week's been good. I've got a presentation tonight to 70 HR people, so I'm gearing up for that. And just doing a bit of prep for the week. But it's there's a lot of multitasking going on this week. I think that's how we'd best describe the progress so far.
I have to agree with that. If you're getting prepped for that and you're on a podcast today, there's a lot going on. So it's always amazing. Always amazing to talk to you, Rita. Now, Rita, you sent through a topic that I was really fascinated with. So today's topic we should highlight for the listeners is deliberate leadership. And I thought this was a really good one because we've talked a lot about leadership, I think, on this podcast, but deliberate leadership is something that we haven't really touched on. So I thought before we jump into all the questions and everything, did you kind of want to... Actually, you know what? I think Danette's question even leads us into this a little bit. So I I might start with Jeanette's question because I think you can kind of go from there, Rita, if you want to tell us all about it. So Jeanette, give us your question for today's conversation.
And Rita knows that I have a curious mind, so I always have two questions. But we'll start with the first one, which is the question of what is deliberate leadership. And of course here, Rita, you should also, I think, hold up your book just so our viewers can see it as well.
There it is. Thank you. Thanks for the book plug. The book actually, the title's not Deliberate Leadership, it's You Are How You Lead. But it says deliberate leadership on purpose and with intention. And so what is deliberate leadership? It's, simplistically, it is leading with intention and purpose. And so really tuning into intentionality, leaders reminding themselves why they committed to leadership in the first place. And I tentatively say committed because sometimes leaders don't commit to leadership. They fall into it by accident. When I'm starting a conversation with a group of leaders, one of the first questions I'll usually ask is, did you choose leadership or did it choose you? And a lot of leaders, you can see at that point, like their face just goes, oh, I don't know, actually. Like, I don't know, did I choose it? Did it choose me? And it's a real moment for some people around, oh yeah, I did make a choice to be in this. So if I've made a choice to be in it, then I better be intentional in relation to how I go about leading. And then from then on, we usually move into some conversations around commitment, self-awareness, making the choice to lead. And I think, like choosing to be in anything, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a activity or a sport or, whatever you're choosing to do, we do make the choice to recommit to that thing if we're going to be in it. And for me, leadership is no different. And I think leaders that struggle with it, I think they lose their way and they forget, number one, that it's a choice. You can get out. You don't have to stay in if it's not for you. And secondly, they go about it haphazardly without much direction, without much strategy, without much thought and consideration. And so in deliberate leadership, we really look at, well, how can we change all that around? So you are recommitting to it. You are, going through and leading with intention.
Love that answer. And it sort of leads into my next question, which is, what can go wrong when leaders aren't deliberate?
Yeah, that's usually the point where I'm sure some of us will get a chat. Some of the people on this podcast will get a chat and go, things aren't going so well. Can you come in like an SOS call? I'll answer that question in two parts, and I'll answer it from the perspective of the leader, but then also the teams and the organisations that they might lead. I think when leaders are not being deliberate, they tell me that they feel a sense of resentment. They feel a lack of commitment to either their team or the thing, the service or the product or the organisation that they're leading. They just kind of fall out of love with it. What we see then is that it ends up impacting them. So sometimes we see depletion of confidence, maybe some performance, or what on the surface might appear to be performance issues. Others may perceive it to be a drop in motivation, a lack of focus, just not having your eye on the ball. I think that's how it feels, and leaders tell me that it feels from their perspective. In terms of how it is then received by those people that they're leading or by the organisations, it's similar. People tell me that leaders, that aren't deliberate, they feel that there is a lack of focus. They feel that the leader is elsewhere, so not present. Lots of multitasking goes on, but I think that actually masks procrastination. So we end up not really focusing on the two or three things that are going to make a significant shift, but we end up, kind of touching lots of different things, but not really progressing much. And I think procrastination gets in the way there because there's not the clarity and the foresight around this is what I'm deliberately going to commit to in this next month, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it might be. People end up just feeling a little bit lost and like their work is not as valued as what it could be, and that there's a misalignment that often occurs then between what I'm, as an individual turning up working for this leader, what am I delivering every day, what am I doing, and how does that align to the overarching goals of the organisation? That clarity, it's actually not clarity, it's almost like a disconnection. It's like it just disconnects and it unplugs, and then there's a lot of energy being burnt, but it not necessarily channeling into anything in particular.
Great answer, and I'm looking forward to the rest of this discussion because I would imagine in the workplace at the moment with so much going on, this is probably happening more than people are aware of. Yeah.
As pressures start to build, and we're already seeing that. I was in a discussion yesterday with some people from a Department of Health here in Victoria, and we're already and health. It has its own crisis in every state in this country because of the huge deficits, and the health system is in a deficit. But that's not the only industry. If you think about our housing market, you think about the cost of living pressures. Those pressures are impacting small to medium business, but also large business. We're seeing large-scale redundancies in a lot of organisations. And I think that once that starts to occur, then we see even more telltale signs of leaders really being challenged on their level of commitment given the change that's occurring.
Nice. So this is a really good time for leaders to perhaps check in with themselves and talk to people like you, Rita, who can give them a bit more sense of what they can do better. So anyway, let's go with the rest of the questions. This is an awesome conversation.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I've already taken a bunch of notes, so this is amazing, Rita. Let's just go to Graham's question because it's the next on the list. So Graham, what was your question? Why'd you pick it?
Thanks, Jez. Where to start? I guess touching on a couple of the points that you made in your answers to Jeanette's multiple questions, because apparently this is just all about Jeanette.
Jeanette's allowed.
I only have one already. I feel that I'm just lacking somehow. So acknowledging that things are busy, there's lots of chaos, disruption. It's called life. Bizarrely, because of how our brain operates, we often prefer to look back to the good old days when it wasn't chaotic and nothing changed, as if that ever actually existed, which it didn't. But I just thinking about this idea of deliberate leadership, I was curious as to, in the work that you do you have a favourite tactic or just a tactic that seems to be more effective than some others in helping leaders hit the pause button? Because I think going back to what you were saying before about being connected to things like purpose and intention and actually showing up with intention, and I'm OCD about why. On so many levels in organisations, and particularly for leaders, if they don't have a why, if there's no clear why, then the minute things get hard, as you said, they're sort of out the door, they disconnect, they fall out of love with whatever they were excited about. So I'm just curious, such a long-winded intro to a very short question. What is your favourite tactic for helping leaders hit the pause button so they can think a little bit more about showing up deliberately with intention?
Graham, some of the context you set there I think is really important around the why, and so I will address that because I think that's super important. So it might be my favourite tactic, but it's often the least favourite tactic of people that I'm working with, because they look at me and they go, yeah, as if I could pause. Because that's exactly what I ask them to do, is take a step back. And we started this conversation, there was a few buongiornos flying around, and for those of you that are not Italian speakers, buongiorno is greetings, hello, good day in Italian. And the word aria in Italian, A-R-I-A, means air. And so often we'll hear aria in an opera context, and that's often because an opera singer would get in front of an open space and sing to a crowd and wow them with their beautiful voices and beautiful music. Aria is what I use to help people pause and stop. And so it's an acronym, and effectively the first A is awareness. So if we can move into an awareness of how we're feeling, and that might be, oh my gosh, I've had heart palpitations for the last few days, my sleep is broken, my digestive system is doing all sorts of cartwheels that it normally doesn't do. I notice that I'm a little short and impatient. I'm raising my voice a little bit more, whatever it might be. We've all got our little telltale signs that mean we're not as on our game as what we could be. The first thing is awareness. So it's having an awareness around that. Now that is easier said than done, because when you are caught in the middle of it, it's really, you've got to stop to become aware. And I think for leaders, because that is challenging to do when you're caught in whatever storm you feel you are facing, it's important to surround yourself with good people that can help you to become aware when you can't see it. And the kind of awareness that we want these supporters around you to be able to share is, hey, I notice that you don't seem yourself, in the last couple of days, or I notice that your tone is a little different. What's happening for you? What can I do to support you?
Yeah.
Rather than, kind of an accusatory, I'm wagging my finger for those that can't see if you're not watching and listening, but rather than that accusatory tone, I think that doesn't bring about awareness, that brings about judgment, which then brings about defensiveness because the person feels attacked. So if you can't be aware in that moment, then you might need some supporters and trusted people around you that can help bring about that awareness. The second stage, once you've moved into, okay, I get that I'm feeling a bit not right. I'm not feeling as deliberate as what I would normally be, and deliberate in a positive sense. Then I can move into reflection, which is the second part of ARIA. And that reflection is, okay, it's almost doing a stock take. What's happening? Why is it happening? What can I do about it? So it's reflecting, it's taking stock of the situation. Then the I in ARIA is about insight. And here you might need to phone a friend for the insights too, because we can be aware of what's happening and we can reflect, but we may not be able to draw those insights clearly. We may need some feedback from others. We may need to talk it through with someone else to help get a different perspective of why things are happening and why they're unraveling and moving in that direction. And then the final A in ARIA is action. So once I've developed those insights, then I can decide and put in motion and put in place some actions that can help me address the situation. So the tactic, it's to use ARIA, the principles of ARIA. So literally to get a breath of air, stop. You might need some supporters around you to help you do that, particularly when you're caught in a mess and what might feel like a mess. Now, I say it's my favourite tactic, not others' favourite tactic necessarily, because leaders will say to me, I'm so busy. Look, I'd love if I had the luxury to stop Rita, but I actually don't.
Yeah, can you just fix it for me in 23 seconds?
Yeah, exactly right, exactly. And if people do that, then what I do say is it's not about going off and finding, an afternoon to sit under a tree, and if you can, brilliant. But if you can't, take 5 minutes, because that ARIA tactic does not take very long at all. It could take 3 minutes. It could be whilst you're stopped at a set of traffic lights. It could be as you're doing something else mindless, like putting some washing on or doing something, walking your dog. But it is about just taking that moment.
I would think, and I like the insight part of ARIA, that the reflection and insight thing, and the point you made about sometimes you need to phone a friend, because sometimes we only know the questions that we know. And the questions that we ask in that sort of space continue to give us the same answer, which is not the answer that we need. So having that different perspective, having somebody else ask us a different question can be really helpful. I love that. Thank you. Can I just ask this? What was the phrase you had? Putting the washing on? What is that?
I can give you another tutorial on that another time, Graham, if you need.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
There's plenty of those. No worries.
Thanks, Rita.
Amazing. Thanks, Graham, and thanks, Rita. Great response there. I think that's a great tip there. I hope our audience has been jotting down some notes. If not, I'm sure they can look in the podcast description. All right, let's jump right into Alan's question here. So, Al, I'll throw it to you. What was your question, and why'd you pick it?
Rita, I love that you've got the distinction between the leader and the team, which kind of ties into my question, which is, what are some of the main benefits from deliberate leadership for the team and the individuals within the team?
A lot of them apply to both groups. I think the first one is clarity. So when leaders are more deliberate, they feel clearer and sharper. So imagine you're bringing something into focus, and so you remove the pixelation and that kind of fuzziness and cloudiness, and you're really bringing it into focus. So you start to see things. You see things in your direction that you want to take in a lot clearer, and your team also experience that. And that then connects into that alignment for them around, Graham raised the point around the why. Hopefully it really gives them a different sense of the why for themselves and connects their purpose to organisational purpose. That alignment is there. So as we get a bit more clarity and focus, then we've got that alignment. I understand why I'm turning up. I understand why my leader is asking me to do what they're asking me to do, or why they're consulting, or why we're having this conversation. So that alignment is also there when we're more deliberate. And then I think the other two components are both connection and engagement. So, as humans, we have such a deep desire to belong and to connect. And when leaders are more deliberate and they're clearer, they're more focused, they're more intentional, I think that it does strengthen that connection, because we're able to see things a little bit more clearly. So if I can see it and I want to belong to it and I want to contribute to it, then that helps me feel that stronger sense of connection. And then the byproduct of that is engagement. So when we've got people that are connected, then they're more engaged. They're more engaged to their job. They're more engaged to their colleagues, their team, the organisations that they serve. And I think, so those four aspects, I think, are relevant to both the leader and the team. I don't think, I'm trying to think whether there's any other distinction. There could be, but I think they're probably the four that there's absolute benefit all around when we are more deliberate, and those four things have a contribution to both the leader, so the individual that's being more deliberate, but also the team that are being led by them.
Yeah, the picture coming up for me, Rita, is like it's a sports team where a top coach, everybody's got that common goal. We're a good solid team, and those teams perform really well.
Yeah, Alan, you're absolutely right there, and so the coaching analogy is all the way through my book. So the book is actually predominantly, it's for leaders to lead deliberately, but I also encourage them to lead like a coach. Because your point, a coach is as invested as their team, around winning the whatever it is, whether it's a premiership or something else, or the game week to week. They are so invested. And when a leader is deliberate, they are invested. There's a different level of commitment from the team, because we all know what our job is in relation to that thing that we've got our eye on. We all know that the contribution of everybody is necessary in order for us to achieve that thing that we want to achieve. And so it is very much, it's a perfect analogy, it's very much like that coaching role that you might see in sport and any other domain, where the coach is absolutely as invested as the team.
Great, thanks for that, Rita.
Yeah, pleasure, thank you.
Amazing, yeah, thanks for that, Rita. I thought that was a great metaphor. I'm so excited to read this book. Everything that you've been saying, I'm just like, I feel like this is all stuff I want to take in, so I love this. I wanted to kind of look at this topic from the perspective of a leader that may need to be more deliberate. So maybe you've been listening to this, maybe you even resonated with that first bit that you talked about did you choose leadership or did leadership choose you, kind of. What are some signs, if you are a leader, that you may need to be more deliberate?
Yeah, so if you jump onto my website, we've got a diagnostic called the Deliberate Leader Diagnostic, and the diagnostic focuses on 8 core attributes of deliberate leadership. And leaders can go ahead and complete the diagnostic, and they get a report and some percentages around how they might be showing up. So from the research that I did in writing the book, the research was very clear on a bunch of characteristics, but particularly it's the energy that a leader turns up with. So these characteristics really do focus on the leader and the energy that they bring. So it's things like how encouraging are you, how empathetic are you enthusiastic, are you engaging, how effective are you as a leader, are you explorative, so are you curious. We look at energy specifically, so how energetic are you, and then how empowering are you. So those attributes, they are usually the telltale sign. So you can jump onto the diagnostic, and that will give you in a couple of minutes you can complete that, and that will give you a reading as to how deliberate you are. I think some of the other, so when any of these characteristics or attributes are out, the other telltale signs are it's a sense of resentment that starts to build, and it's a resentment around perhaps your approach, why you're even leading in the first place. when your mantra starts to be, gee, this is thankless, I don't feel like I'm getting anything out of this, I don't feel appreciated, I don't feel like the work that I'm doing or that my team is doing matters. They're all the commentaries, that internal commentary that might be being played in a leader's mind. And I think that they are some of the telltale signs that you probably need to get a bit of refocus happening and really think about your intention, which, addresses that why. Why are you doing it in the first place? And it could be that if you are feeling any of those things, it's not necessarily that you shouldn't, you're not in the right role because you're a leader, but it just might be that you've outgrown the organisation, perhaps the organisation's outgrown you. For whatever reason, there might be a misalignment. So, one of the first things I'll say to leaders when they're having this crisis of confidence around leadership, it's not throwing out baby with the bathwater. It's doing that reflection piece and really looking at, well, what's my data telling me here around all the symptomatic things that I may be feeling, and then what can I do to address those?
Yeah, amazing. So many good tips there. And I think this diagnostic sounds fantastic. We'll have the link available in the podcast description. Go check yourself out on that one. I think that's a really great tool. So thanks for that, Rita.
And Jez, can I just add, I've done that diagnostic and it's brilliant. So, yeah, I would highly encourage our listeners and viewers to do the diagnostic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Danette was one of our original testers, and she was awesome in helping us come up with it. So thank you.
Amazing. Well, that's exciting. It's got a little bit of a magical learning history behind it, so we're very happy to share that. All right, let's jump over to Lega's question. So Lega sent this one in, which is, what are some exercises to become a better and more deliberate leader? I guess, there's probably people that may have been listening to this and go, you know what, this is something I want to work on. So what tips do you have for those people?
So ARIA would be the first tip. So definitely applying the principles of ARIA. So awareness, reflection, insight, and action. And there's a section in the book that covers that and how you can do your own ARIA audit just to check how you're going against that. Obviously, with the diagnostic is there, so that is another. And the diagnostic comes with a workbook that's available online. And what the workbook does is it helps people identify, based on your score, is it an area of strength, is it an area of opportunity, or is it an area of challenge? And then we've broken that down into some exercises and really practical things that people can do dependent on how they've scored against the diagnostic. So I think they're just some really practical exercises. And that is more about the leader. But to answer that question more about the people that you're working with, one of the frameworks in the book is connect, ask, calibrate, support. And so in order to be a more deliberate leader, we really pay attention and focus on connection with our teams, and we do that specifically through empathy. So sometimes it's really hard to see someone else's perspective unless, we're prepared to be empathetic. And for some people, empathy gets confused with sympathy and pity and the rest of it because it kind of gets lumped in. My favourite definition on empathy is that we are activated to do something in relation to the person's situation. We really feel a sense of wanting to do something, and that we also have a deep understanding of their situation. And that comes from an organisation called the Potential Project, and you can check out their work online. But they make this beautiful distinction between empathy, sympathy, pity, and ultimately they encourage leaders to move into that compassionate space. So I think when we're connecting, which is the first principle, absolutely demonstrate empathy. And if you're not sure, because I think a lot of us go, yeah, I know what empathy is, but do we really know what it is in leadership? So I think that's the first point. The second one is ask. And so when we want to be more deliberate, I think it's worthwhile asking our people, our stakeholders, what's happening for you? What can I do to better support you? Ask them, kind of get a temperature check and be checking in with them. The fourth component is calibrate. And in calibrate, it's borrowed from neuro-linguistic programming. And effectively there it's calibrating all your data points. As a leader, most leaders work fast. And so they are problem solvers. They're trying to cut through, issues and get a resolution and get an answer. And that sometimes that comes with speed, not always, but their mind is kind of constantly looking for problem fix. And in calibration, we have to look deeper at what the set of problems are that we see. And so we have to look at, I encourage leaders then to look at all the data points that they're getting. So body language, levels of engagement, what the person's saying and doing, what you think they are feeling. And so we're calibrating all those data points before we make a decision. And I think that that's really important. That calibration process also, it helps to slow us down and really think about, have I considered this issue deeply enough? And have I considered it from the perspective that I need to? And then finally, support. And I do an exercise with leaders where I put up a set of supportive behaviours and unsupportive behaviours, but I don't tell them at the start whether they're supportive or unsupportive. And they look at the list and they go, yeah, what's wrong with that? Like telling someone to, it's not the worst thing that could happen. Move on, you got this, all that kind of stuff that we think is supportive, but in fact it's very unsupportive. And one of the biggest mistakes we can make as leaders is assume the kind of support that someone needs. And we often do that because it's about the support we're prepared to give, the support that we're capable of giving, the support that's worked for us. But in fact, the best thing to do there, which is sometimes the scariest, is just to ask the person, how can I best support you? What can I do for you right now? That answer might be nothing. I don't even know what support I need right now because I'm working through the situation or the issue. So it's a question that has some risk associated with it because you don't know what you get back. But that question is very empowering because when a person is feeling a sense of change, loss, frustration, you're empowering them by saying, well, what can I do for you? What support can I give you? So I think following that connection, asking calibration support, there are also some other practical ways just to do a bit of a reconciliation on what the person may need.
I was going to say, Rita, that actually really reminds me, and it's something that I have, me and my partner do a lot, which is that if one of us brings an idea or something, we will tell the other person how we want it received in some ways. It's like, I don't need this criticized right now. This is very early stages. So just any sort of ideas you have that are positive off this, just to kind of, because sometimes you don't know, if you come in with one thing and then they bring another thing, it can totally derail something. So I really, I like this connect, ask, calibrate, support model.
That's wonderful though, in terms of raising, because I think that's a really important, that we can all take accountability for sharing an idea with someone, but then also asking for that, what we're looking for in that moment.
Yeah.
It's powerful and it helps the other person. So they immediately know what role they need to jump into in order to best support you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely recommend it. It's worked really well for us. And I guess this actually leads us into kind of our final question, which is perfect. So Kanika's question, who is my partner, so there you go, that's a double extra connection, but how can we be all more deliberate in our everyday lives? We're talking about being deliberate and, some people getting placed into the role of leader and, our lives have some of that effect sometimes. So yeah, how can we all be a little bit more deliberate in our everyday lives?
It's a simple question, but also a complex one because it goes to the point of what does deliberate mean for you? And I think, so for me, being deliberate, and the reason I chose to really focus on deliberate leadership insofar as an area of research is that everything I do is I like to think it's intentional. So if I'm in and committed to something, then I'm in and I'm focused and that's what I'm doing. And then I've also got to be discerning enough to go, that's not what I'm doing anymore. So I exit or I change paths or whatever it is. So I think being more intentional in our everyday lives is really, it is being intentional and it's about thinking. Often we, just do it, right? So when I was a kid, and even my 9-year-old, like the kids are still, Nike has such a strong brand presence still, right? In terms of apparel but their messaging has been timeless in terms of that just do it. And I love it because I'm very action orientated. I think it can be enhanced though, because the just do it often is do it without thought. And I don't think that means that people are intentionally being reckless, but I think there's an opportunity for us to insert a little bit more thinking and a slower pace. So I know for me personally, and Danette knows this because we've had plenty of conversations about it, for me it's a constant check around, should I be doing that thing? Am I taking on too much? What could I, if I let go of that, then what's going to be the opportunity cost almost, like because there's always an opportunity of letting something go to let something else in. So I think it's creating that thinking time and space for a lot of leaders, again, because they're kind of problem fix. It's quick, and they don't value, a lot of leaders don't value that, just slowing down. And we actually see slowing down sometimes as procrastination, as being too slow, as not being quick enough. But in fact, we need more of that. Like, we need more slowness brought in. And that's why, there's so much around mindfulness and slow eating, slow read, like all of it is, there is a movement, and it's a building, and it is building in terms of just that slowness and really doing things in a calmer, less busy way.
That, Rita, that's reminded me of some stand-up comedy I saw recently, which was about how mindfulness is a new concept, because back in the 90s and before that, there wasn't a need for it, because you would just be on a bus, and that would be the mindfulness. Either you're reading a book or you're just on the bus, and things like that. Whereas now, because there's so much going on, you do have to actually actively create that space that was naturally there in the past.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, gosh, but you're on a bus, but you're doing your banking, and you're sending a WhatsApp, and you're doing a this and you're doing a that. Like, we actually, multitasking has not been so good for us. It's not kind on our brain. It's been linked. There's some really good research now that's linked to all sorts of neurodegenerative diseases, particularly as we get older.
Yeah, well, it's a great tip that we should all get into, a bit more mindfulness there. I might throw to everybody for some final thoughts now, so I might start with you, Al. Al, any final thoughts on today's conversation and deliberate leadership?
Love that idea of why for mindfulness is really connecting with me now for our health long term. That really stood out. The other thing that stood out for me is that connect, calibrate, support. I can see where that I can action that at work, and I could have actioned that this morning and had a happier household rather than telling someone what they should have done. So thank you so much, Rita.
Pleasure. Me too, Alan. There was one of those conversations in my house this morning too.
Amazing. Thanks for that, Alan. Thanks, Rita. Let's go to Danette. Danette, any final thoughts on today's conversation and deliberate leadership?
I love the whole conversation. I love the ARIA model, just in terms of helping people come back to being more deliberate. And I love that bit at the end about space. That's totally something that even I had a conversation yesterday with someone, and we were talking about how what we're doing at the moment in society, particularly leadership, actually is making us poorer leaders because we don't value that space, but it's where our brain does all the heavy lifting. So totally agree with that. And I hadn't heard the bit about the neurodegenerative diseases and multitasking, so I'm going to do a bit of research around that, because that's actually, again, another point to help people go, okay, well, it feels good in the moment, it actually isn't good short term or long term. So thank you, Rita. Fabulous conversation as always.
And just on that, Danette, so the really good stuff from Dr. Peter Attia, and he wrote a book called Outlive. He also has a podcast called The Drive, and his work is specifically focused on, as we age, what we need to be aware of, but things that we can be putting into place before we get to that stage where, it's done the damage.
Awesome. And I'm hoping Jez will put those in the podcast description as well, because I bet there's some listeners and viewers who'd be interested too. So thank you, Rita. Awesome as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Got that one jotted down there, so very exciting. Peter Attia.
That's right.
Great. We'll link that one. Let's go to Graham. Graham, any final thoughts on today's conversation and deliberate leadership?
So many. Rita, once again, thank you for sharing all of your knowledge, your research, your wisdom with us. It's so much to cover. Again, love the ARIA model. There's a 5-year-old in me that wants to change it to Maria. Don't ask me why. So put motivation on the front of it. I apologise. It was funny in my head, and I probably should have left it there. I love Jez's point at the end about how we actually have to work at mindfulness today, whereas once upon a time it was a lot easier because there was just so fewer distractions. If you're on a bus, you're on a bus. If you're on a train, you're on a train. So, well, you've either got a book or you've just got yourself, sort of thing. So a really good reminder, I think, for all of us about the value and the importance of creating some sort of ritual around having, hitting the pause button, going back to your whole intention thing. Amazing. So thank you so much.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Cool. Also, and Rita, we'll get you to talk about your book in 1 second, but I just want to grab any final thoughts you had on today's conversation and deliberate leadership.
Oh, I loved our conversation. I loved where you all took it, and your questions were so wonderful. Just to even help me to stop and really think. What's the key message that I want to get out of, and encourage people to take away as they read the book. So thank you.
Amazing. Well, let's get into the book, because I'm sure people have been listening to this podcast. They've gone, I need to find out more about this book. I know I'm thinking it, having listened to all these questions, all these answers. So, Rita, do you want to tell us a little bit about your book and also where people can find you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, thank you. The book's called You Are How You Lead. How to lead deliberately with intention and purpose. It's available on my website. It's also available on Amazon and all the places where you get your books, Booktopia and all the places. The book is quite practical in nature, so those that know me will know it's easy to get through. It's one of those books that you could pick up and put down as you need it. The chapters are all focused on practical skills around particularly that connect, ask, calibrate, support model. It's written in mind with encouraging leaders to adopt a coaching mindset as they lead, because I believe that that's one of the most effective ways to get that connection with your team. And it also builds greater commitment. So it's got reflection questions at the end of each chapter, and it is designed as a really practical read and guide around helping you to be more of a coach as you lead, but also helping you to be more deliberate and intentional.
Fantastic. And where's the best places for people to reach out to, Rita?
Yeah, on probably just through the website, ritacincotta.com. They can book in a discovery call if you'd like to have a chat. And my email address is plastered all over the website too. So yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram, everywhere all the cool kids hang, except TikTok. I'm not there yet. Maybe one day. Not yet.
Well, amazing, Rita. We've had a great conversation. This has been so fun. I've taken pages of notes, so I've had a great time. I want to thank everybody that's been sharing this podcast and getting it out there. It's been awesome. Rita, it's always good. You're now officially a Magical Learning favourite guest, because you've been on many times, and we'll have you on again. To everybody, thank you so much for sharing. And as always, have a magical week.